please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Clerk, could I have a roll call, please?
Alderman Bogan.
Present.
Alderman Bachman. Alderman Reed.
Present.
Alderman Milner.
Present.
Alderman Dickerson.
Here.
Alderman Long.
Here.
Alderman Turner.
Here.
Alderman Leibison.
Here.
And Mayor Hassel.
Here, and we do have a quorum. Good evening, everyone. Tonight we do have a ceremonial matter. Mr. Gabe Dalton has been with us for some time now. If you could please join me up here, Mr. Deal. Gabe is celebrating his 20-year service anniversary with us, and while I could probably say some wonderful things, I think Chris could probably tell a little more of the story than I could, since he's worked with him a little more. So I'm going to give Chris Steele a moment to speak on his behalf.
I'll be limited on those, I'll let those. Well, many of you know he's been with the department for 20 years, but he started in the parks maintenance area and worked with Johnny going through there. And then when the community center opened up, worked in the community center. And as we all feel as the crown jewel of the city, this man takes care of it very personally and has done a fantastic job. And we all love the fact that he opens it up at 5 a.m. so we don't have to. That's a wonderful thing. But not only that, but Gabe also is over the mechanics of the outdoor pool and opening that up as well. So he has been quite a utility manager and has taken the job very serious. And I didn't want to miss the opportunity to say how much that we appreciate Gabe for all the years, and he is a dedicated employee. We appreciate him very much.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
And I have seen him there at the 5 o'clock. Occasionally I go in at 5 to swim, and he's always there, always has a smile, always in a good mood. Always helps out with the events at the park, like 4th of July and the Halloween. We have a good time, and it's a pleasure to have him here, and we hope to have him for quite a while longer. So
That's the plan.
on behalf of the board and myself, I want to congratulate you and present you with this certificate of 20 years.
Awesome.
You hold that
Let's
there.
all move in.
Smile.
Okay,
Cheese.
nice smile. And now smile for him.
Awesome.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank all of you. I've invited some people here tonight that really, if it wouldn't be for them, I wouldn't be where I'm at. I wouldn't be as dedicated as I am. Started out with Kevin Bogie. Thanks for giving me the chance. David, Daryl, Dee, all of the guys here, Chris, Dave. Barb works for me. She does an amazing job. My wife, I love you dearly. Everybody, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
All right. Very good. All right, thank you all for coming. Okay, that's it for our ceremonial matters tonight. At this time, I will open the floor to public participation. Anybody who has anything to bring before this board that is not on our already scheduled agenda, please feel free to step forward. Please be sure to provide your name and address to our clerk so he knows who has been up here. Right behind, there you go.
Chris. Sorry. Good evening. I was told that there was going to be a meeting about the city ramp at Harrisonville Lake. And I just want to find out what's going on, because last time somebody called down and said they were just waiting for the water to go down. And the last time the water was that low was 2004 or 5, if I remember right. It's like 9 foot low.
Yeah,
So-
the initial discussions we had when this first came up with damage to the boat ramp was to see if the water level would drop low enough. And obviously, there's no way to predict that. I mean, the last few years, we've had so much rain, you're absolutely right, the lake level has not really dropped. But there's been quite a bit of, interest in this, you could say. So we have it scheduled to discuss at our Public Works meeting, which is the first Tuesday in June. What date is that? The 5th? June 5th at 6 o'clock here. And we're gonna discuss some options. We've had a lot of people step forward, offering to volunteer, even equipment that if we needed. We're trying to look into what it would cost, or if we can get our hands on a coffer dam, because that's probably the main thing that would be needed to do that, because you're gonna have to dam it off to get to it.
Right.
But we do have plan to have discussion and see if there's something we can try to move that forward a little quicker than what, like I say, waiting for the water to drop. At this point, I think we've decided we wanna take a little bit closer look at it, see if we can get it done without waiting for that. But we still have to have that meeting and that discussion and find out what our options are. Public Works Director's not here this evening. I was gonna ask him what he had found out this evening, but obviously he's not here, so I can't get that update. But we are gonna discuss it at that meeting and see what we can come up with.
Okay.
So, do you know if they got the pictures that we requested the last meeting?
I'm not sure. Have you
I
talked to him?
sent pictures to Patterson.
You sent some pictures to Eric? Okay. I have not seen them yet. I would assume they're bringing those to our meeting on June 5th, and we'll look at it there and have that discussion.
All right. Well,
So,
thank you.
you bet.
Go to that meeting.
Yeah, I would. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
I've been fishing that lake since I was like
Well,
5 years old.
And I'll tell you, like I told everyone else, I know it hit crappie season right at the peak of it, and it was, I mean, not that it's ever a great time, but it was just, the timing was horrible with when it came up, and I definitely sympathize, because I like to fish, but, like I say, that's our drinking water lake, so we kinda have to be a little more
Oh, yeah.
protective of it than we do, say, other lakes as far as, you know, what we're looking at. But like I said, we've had enough interest. I think we're gonna see about moving ahead with seeing what we can get done out there, so.
right.
But yeah, we'd love to have you at the meeting.
All right,
And
thank
so
you.
then you have pictures of it at that meeting and, options and stuff?
I'll make sure we have pictures for that. You bet.
Because I just don't want it to be one of them things where that meeting's the one that gets pictures, and those meetings only, once a month, and maybe another month before we are able to, progress.
Mhm. Yeah, because it's gonna, I mean, even if we get something figured out there, it's gonna take a little time to put together what we would do and how we're gonna.
Yeah, because I mean, like, I looked at, personally, and there wasn't any rebar in it, and so like, maybe there's a possibility of, just putting some gravel in the hole or something, short term, because I know that the original concern that I had heard was that there was rebar in the ramp, and it's no longer there if there was any, so, even like a, short term fix while I wait to, for a longer term one, be good. I just, I'll definitely be at that meeting. I just want to make sure we have all the evidence there, so we're not, a month later.
I agree.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak this evening? Seeing no one, I will close the public participation. We'll move on to the approval of the minutes. First tonight, we have the minutes from the Board of Aldermen meeting on May 7th, 2018.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion from Alderman Dickerson and a second from Alderman Turner. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Minutes are approved. Next, we have the minutes from the May 7th executive session.
Move to approve.
Motion from Alderman Dickerson,
Second.
second from Alderman Turner. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Minutes are approved. Moving on to our agenda items. First item we have tonight is the reappointment of April McLaughlin and Claudia, I don't want to mess this name up. Kozlorich, thank you, to a 3-year terms on the Historic Preservation Commission. They have both expressed interest to continue to serve, so.
I make a motion that we appoint him.
Second?
I have a motion from Alderman Dickerson and a second from Alderman Bowman. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, appointments are approved. Moving on, special event permit for Life Issues 5K Recovery Walk. Good evening, Chief.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the Board of Aldermen. before you tonight is this is turning into an annual event. I believe this is the 6th year for this event. It's for Heartland Baptist Fellowship or Life Issues. They have a 4.4-mile walk event. They're asking for, or planning it for August 31st, starting at 6:30. They start at the Justice Center, and then they walk out to Heartland Baptist Church. Most of it happens outside of the community, but they do walk on a little bit of the road. They've never caused any problems. We've assisted them with vests. They're requesting an escort this year, which will either be on-duty officers or the VIPs for the short part that's in the city. And they're looking at about 150 participants, walkers, and supporters, and again, no problems. We recommend approval.
Okay, any questions for the chief?
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
A motion from Alderman Turner and a second from Alderman Miller. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Event's approved. Next, we have a special event permit for the 2018 Park District Festival.
Well, I have a request for you, Mayor. Next year on the agenda, or next time you bring Gabe in, let's move him to the bottom of the agenda, then the room won't clear out.
Well, in 10 more years, I'll make sure to do that. I don't know who all will be here, but I'll make a note of that for the next
He
meeting.
knows how to clear out a room. Okay, what this is the annual Burnt District Festival, which we've had for several years. Kind of speaking with City Administrator Welch this year, we kind of changed it up. In years past, I took each one of their requests and wrote exactly what that means to the city. This year, we kind of shortened it up. We just showed you their request and what the actual cost for each request was from last year. So you have those two sheets to compare what their request is and what it cost us actually last year. In years past, we just kind of estimated. This past event, we did a little better job of tracking. I think Rodney Jacobs did the majority of that, but it's more exact numbers of our costs. So I can go through it line by line, request by request, or in years past, we've just kind of thrown it out there for questions, whatever the board's pleasure is.
Any questions?
Move to approve. Second.
I have a motion from Alderman Bowman and a second from Alderman Miller for approval. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, event permit approved. Next, we have approval, Cass County Library has a request for electrical hookup for their bookmobile while it's parked in the city loft.
So it's been in a shed on a piece of property outside city limits, or they've stored it and plugged in for the generator. However, that land is being sold, so where they've kept it, they can't keep it in there anymore. So they're, for the time being, they want to keep parking it, which they have a permit, over on that east lot behind the library. But for the generator, they need to be able to plug it in. So if the board is okay with them doing that, I don't see it being a large amount of money. We can track it, and we will bill the library board accordingly.
For the use of the electricity?
Yeah.
The library will.
Yeah, we're not gonna charge them any more to park there, just to plug in, safely plug in, to where there's not people walking across the court or driving across the
That
court.
was my question, that we're plugging it into them, their service.
Yeah, it's going into one of the utility poles, because they can't get close enough to the building.
Okay.
We've got utility out on the poles there, they can pull right up to it, plug in.
So they're only plugging it in when they're using it, is that how?
Plug it in to charge.
Charge it, okay, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can see one of the utility poles right there, that's got electric service on it. So that's the middle lane of the parking area. And they do park the way you see it, horizontally. I mean, we can have them back into a spot, but usually we're not hard up for parking spaces back there, so doing it horizontally works. And then it may be easier also to extend the cord to get into the outlet.
And then they do realize during the Burnt District Festival, they'll want it away,
Yeah.
far away.
Far.
Yep. All right. Anybody have any concerns, or?
Is that electrical outlet secured to the degree where no one else could utilize it?
No, I mean, anybody can use it at this point, if it's turned on. Yeah.
They'll have to have a special plug, correct?
No, I don't think so. We'll have to look at that, but I think it's just a
Usually if it-
120 outlet.
Is it a 30 amp or do you know? Usually those are 3-prong plugs that you have to turn and lock.
I have not seen it yet. They just asked about putting electric. Well, if they want to do that and it requires something special, they'll have to have an electrician
There's
make
30
an
amp,
improvement.
30 amp, they could use an adapter probably.
Well, and RVs have a special 3-prong, you can't just go put anything in there, it would have to be that tight.
Right, the plug, but I think
In the
what,
box.
I would assume your question is you're worried about somebody using the actual,
Right.
not the bookmobile, it's the actual electric. I had that same thought, was this, could somebody just walk up and plug in, which I guess you would be pretty obvious if you're in the middle of a parking lot plugged in, but, I guess if it's I guess the library is assuming some risk because we're going to charge them for any metering to the pole, so. Anything else?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion from Alderman Dickerson and a second from Alderman Levison for approval. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we can plug in the bookmobile. Moving on, approve selection of a 457 retirement plan provider.
We went out for RFP to see about getting whether keeping our current provider or to get a new provider. It was also part of what the state auditors came up with, and we didn't do enough of bidding. So let's go out and see what's out there. We sent out 5 notices to different providers for 457s. We received 2, one from our existing provider, which is RPA, and they go through security benefit. That's where they get the mutual funds. And the other provider that came in was Nationwide, a large corporation. So we had a chance to go through the requests that they sent, the responses. We had a chance to interview those that represent the companies and will represent them for the employees here on site. We also talked to their references that they had in their responses. We felt after interviewing, we'd like to see more participation from the employees, but we don't think there's enough response right now because RPA doesn't do a lot of on-site discussing, doesn't let people know they're coming. Whereas Nationwide will do that every quarter, every 6 months, whatever we think we need. You can't have it every month, but I mean, there's still a point at which you can get them here to discuss for those that have investments already in or want to change it, want to look at it differently, want to ask some questions. They're not going to tell you what to put in or what to put into in the way of mutual funds, but they will give you some advice. There's a good online program that Nationwide offers that we think is a real helpful tool. So I think the benefit at this point is to go with Nationwide to make the switch. It would take about 90 to 120 days to make that switch, but we think that they'll offer a better program for employees. We can get some more participation, and that will help the employees as they get closer to retirement.
Are there any other cities around us that use Nationwide, or is everybody pretty much on the same?
Now, there was Lee Summit that uses them, I believe it was Raytown, there are others across the state.
So they've had good luck.
The representative is out of Independence or Blue Springs, so he's close, and it'll be easy to get here. Whereas RPA's representative is out of Springfield, so I think that's gonna, put them at a disadvantage to getting up here.
And how long are we locked in?
Until we're done.
So you can decide at any point?
Yeah. Kind of the same thing with RPA at this point, we just have to cancel the contract and then get everything transferred.
And so do the employees receive a quarterly statement of how their funds and investments are doing?
You can either go online or they'll send it to you.
Any other questions?
Make a motion to approve.
Motion from Alderman Dickerson,
Second.
second from Alderman Milner. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we'll go with Nationwide. All right. Approve the use of the Wex gas card.
So we discussed this a couple of times, and we discussed it with the supervisors. The need to track better what our gas usage is Right now, we go through MFA for all of our gas, and to do that, you have to write down your mileage, and then you put that piece of paper on with the receipt, and then you hand that in to finance, and then finance would have to do all the calculations to see if, you're using too much gas or whatever, to kind of make sure that we're getting the right numbers. The state auditor came through and said we weren't tracking it well enough. That was one of their issues. One of the ways to do that is to get with a gas card that will allow us to put in the mileage into the system, and then you can check what your mileage is and to see if there's some numerical differences where, you were getting 25 miles to the gallon this month, and then last month you got 10 miles to the gallon. There's a problem. We can kind of trace where those issues are. The advantage to going with a WEX card is it's done through state procurement, and it's available to use at a number of gas stations. So when you're not in Harrisonville, when we send police officers, public works out somewhere else, you can use the gas card at a number of locations. So we're not stuck with just one. And if they don't have a station there, you either gotta pay for it yourself or wait until you get there, where you find where the station is. So this would be the best option, we think, or our recommendation for the city is to go with the WEX card and transfer over to that. Doesn't mean we're not gonna buy an MFA. It just means that it gives us more of an option, and also is gonna be a better tracking tool for finance.
Okay, any questions? I think this is a great idea. It will satisfy several needs.
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion from Alderman Dickerson and a second from Alderman Reese. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And it is approved. We will go with the WEX gas card. Next we have second reading, Council Bill 32.
Second reading, Council Bill 32, an ordinance to amend Chapter 435, sign regulations of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Harrisonville, Missouri by amending Section 435.120, temporary signs concerning election signs within the City of Harrisonville, Missouri.
Okay. And this was second reading, which usually is followed immediately by a roll call. This was voted to be held over for second reading for this meeting in case anybody wanted to come express any concerns.
I'm gonna say I still have the same concerns as last time. I think when you're looking at signs, especially for places like our hospital, our city itself, community center, when we put stuff on a ballot, for the school district, to be able to get the information out there with no tax increase, it's simply a bond issue, it's not, your taxes aren't gonna go up, you can't do that on a order for a sign. And again, I don't feel that there's a whole lot of difference between these size signs and the signs, the temporary signs that people, businesses across town have up for short periods of time advertising their specials or things like that. So I don't agree with this. I don't think it's the right move.
All
I
right.
have one thing that I want clarified.
Sure.
So this is talking about just in residential area though. Can they go with a bigger sign?
No.
It's not.
It's all across town.
Everything. It's not just
For political election signs
Right.
only.
for political, so political election signs, meaning that too. Well, I would say, what if we allowed bigger signs in commercial areas?
Essentially, that's what it is now, is
We do now.
you have a if it's non-residential, is basically the way it's written now. The issue you run into, which is the difference between this and a temporary sign, is a temporary sign requires a permit, and we actually know where they plan to locate that sign, and the codes department is aware of it. They can go out and, once the sign's placed, inspect that it's in the proper place. With these, I'll be honest, half the time, it's not even the candidate putting the sign up, it's somebody else putting it up for them, and they get placed in places that they really shouldn't be. I personally have had a lot of complaints about people about why we have all these giant highway signs in the middle of town. Again, a small sign is, 5 feet off the road. You should be able to read that. If you can't, you probably shouldn't be driving. But this doesn't affect billboard signs. Like if somebody had a billboard, like you've seen some advertisements, those are completely separate. So And that's where big signs were intended, really, was a highway sign.
Well, I was just curious about the commercial properties or something that wasn't, like if the school had something going on and they wanted to put a big
No.
sign up there, or the hospital had something going on and they wanted to put
Well,
up.
as far as the tax goes, the park tax, there was a group that put up signs, they were all the 2 foot by 18-inch signs to extend the park tax to continue after community center was paid, and that passed with flying colors, and it was done with all small signs. So, I don't,
One thing to remember, and however the board certainly wants to do this, is this specifically is dealing with unregulated signs. You still have like billboards, business signs, a number of other temporary signs that are regulated by different sections. So non-regulated election signs is what, as I read your code, is what this is addressing. Those are the signs that people, you see just suddenly spring up at election time, as opposed to whether it's billboards, business, temporary, other types of signs are regulated. And there the city has some say as to where they go and what they are. And those signs could include some election. You could have a billboard that is an election sign, but it's governed by a different part of the code because it's regulated.
So you're saying that if the school wanted to put up a bigger sign, they could come to us and ask? See, that's my question.
no, what they would, I mean, what he's saying is if there was if you wanted to purchase one of those large billboards out on the highway, those are regulated separately from this. This just means within the city limits of Harrisonville, there would not be any larger than a 24-inch, or whatever the total.
4 square feet.
Yeah, 4 square feet, within the city limits. So, and again, I've seen quite a few of the 2 foot by 2 foot, they're bigger than you would think. You put your letters on it right, they stand out just as good as any other sign that you see out there. And the thing is it's not like, I mean, everybody would have the same, it's just like before, everybody has the same opportunity. You're not taking away from one group or another, everybody's in the same boat, so.
But if we started this, which we did, started it as a safety issue because of the accident, is how it was all presented, yet we still have the other signs in town. So if people have to get permits for those, which I'm sure they all don't, but if they do, and then we have somebody who goes out and monitors them and checks them to make sure that they're in the right place, why would we not still do that with the same size of election signs?
That's a
And if
separate,
they're wrong, take them down.
we haven't addressed that part of the sign ordinance, it's totally separate. This was its own piece of it, and
I understand
when we
that, but
tried
that
to
was my
address the
point.
other, it was much more complicated. We decided this could be done now, and we'll continue with the other.
But we've had how many years where those little temporary signs have been up and nobody's had an issue with them up until right now?
I think the issue is a 4x8 sign.
No, I'm just saying the
4
bigger
foot by
signs,
4.
again.
4 foot by 4 foot's big too,
Yeah.
so.
I mean, I had big signs, but I'm ready to give them up.
Well, but again, my point is not necessarily the election part, it's the other entities within our community.
I think if
You
the
can't
sign
get
was-
the information on those
If the
signs.
sign would have been smaller, there wouldn't have been an accident.
I still haven't seen any reports there was. We asked for
Well,
that.
you don't have to ask people at the accident. We don't go out and gather that kind of
There'd be a
information.
police report.
Okay,
So-
anybody else have an opinion?
Yeah.
I'm ready to leave.
Okay, all right.
Since the bottom line is that it said that it's my sign that caused the accident, and I was never informed of an accident, and therefore I never moved the sign. Had I been informed that there was any sort of a safety issue, that thing would have been gone within minutes, because we were very careful about that. The city of Harrisonville has very specific rules about where and how far from the sidewalk or the highway or what, and I don't know about everybody, but the people who put my signs up walked around with tape measures to make sure that they were going in the right spot. So the safety issue thing is a little beyond me, but that being said, what about putting a sign on, I had one on a fence that was clear the heck away from. So they would no longer be allowed on fences, am I?
Because
Okay,
it's the size.
and then there were some other folks had on buildings that were on the side of buildings. And would those no longer be?
Nope.
Does that seem to be a safety issue of sorts?
I mean, it'd be difficult to differentiate all that in an ordinance. ordinance, I mean, that would be,
Well, it would certainly be more,
Convoluted.
I mean, it's doable, I suppose, it's just more complex. I mean,
then you have
I
to explain.
think the intent of the current ordinance originally was to have a generic application throughout the city. This ordinance just shrinks the size of that sign somewhat that generically applies to the city. If the board chooses to have me, for example, work with Happy to try to construct something that would have levels of complexity to it, we can certainly attract that, but that's up to you all. I'm just saying it will be more complex and take a little thought process to make sure it's clear enough so it makes it, you want to try to make an ordinance clear enough that people aren't constantly making mistakes, because that'll just frustrate people as well. So it would take some thought, but we can create exceptions.
Okay, my next question is, and I do understand, Ryan, that the accident, whether or not, is really not a part of this issue. To me, it is a part of the issue because I'm the one that's been accused of it.
But it could have been anybody's sign. I
It
mean,
could have been,
so don't
but
take that
I
the
understand
wrong
that,
way.
but
It could be
apparently it
anybody's sign.
wasn't.
Okay.
think the
Apparently
point
it
was
wasn't,
that the
and
sign
it was
was-
my name that was in the paper, and it's the citizens of Harrisonville that believe that my sign caused an accident. And so my next question is, I believe at the last meeting that Chief Hofer was going to check and see if there had been an accident report. Have we gotten any word back on that?
Go ahead, Chief.
Well, I have used our report writing system a couple different times, doing a query when our query system is not very good. And without at least a time frame, because I kind of went about a 10-year span, I was unable to locate anything. Not saying that it's not there, I couldn't locate it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
So that being said, if this is just for safety, I'm still a little confused about the why we're doing this and why we're doing it at this time.
Well, it was actually, it was discussed, like I said, we got into this discussion, gosh, I can't remember, Happy, it was sometime last year, and it got into the rest of the sign ordinance kind of got mixed in with it, and it became, I mean, at some point, we were discussing how changing of temporary signs, it was gonna affect real estate signs, like the ones that stick in the yard. Those are kind of outside the norm, and adjusting the temporary sign ordinance was going to affect that, and trying to find a common area for that was very, as Mr. Fairfield said, complex. And like I said, then we realized that when we came back to this, that it was two separate parts of the code, and it's like, well, we can at least address this issue, and then we can go back and address the remaining signs, which, again, I said before, I think the sign of, our sign ordinances are kind of a mess, and they do need to be cleaned up, and, but that's gonna be a little more time than just a couple committee meetings to do that. It's gonna require some staff time.
Okay, so we're doing this to clean up the,
I had said before, I mean, obviously Alderman Dickerson brought up that he had a complaint about, there was a wreck, whether it was recorded, I don't know. I've had complaints too, why are these large signs that are meant for highways in the middle of town? And you can say what you want, I've lived here for 40+ years, we didn't always have these big signs up, they just started springing up in the last 10 years. And there's not really a place for a highway sign 5 feet off the residential street, if that's a non-residential area, and it's there. I mean, I saw them down at the car wash. I mean, you know, when Obie had his any signs, that's a commercial area, somebody could put them there. There was a great big one down there at the car wash, and by this current code, you could have one there. So I was following through with not only the safety concern he brought, but the complaints that I had about why we have these large signs in town. So it's brought to the board. Unless anybody has anything else to add, we're ready for the roll call.
I guess my concern is if
Alderman
we're
Bowman
going to
did
do
have-
that, we're
Alderman
gonna,
Bowman had-
oh, go ahead, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt
Well,
you.
no, she
She couldn't see me, go ahead.
She-
Go ahead,
okay.
Laura. No,
She
I'm just
said-
saying, if we're gonna change sign ordinance, let's do it all at once, all the way through. From temporary
Okay.
signs to the same
Alderman
thing.
Bowman?
Thank you. This is one of those issues that I believe we should have discussed in a work session instead of in a committee. I think we spent a lot of time, the last board meeting and this board meeting discussing this. And the time would have been better spent, and out of respect for the audience, it would have been better spent had we discussed it in a work session as opposed to a committee. Your committee met on April the 18th and again on May the 24th to discuss this sign ordinance. I was in both of those meetings. We're talking about limiting the size of signs for only 30 days. And it's only 30 days whenever we have an election. Our signs can only be up for 30 days. If it truly was a safety issue, I think any and all of us would be opposed to large signs. But those large signs that were out there were on commercial property and vacant land. They were not in residential areas. So I cannot support this because I just don't believe that it's a valid change to our ordinance. Alderman Miller?
All right. Anybody else? Could I have a roll call, please?
Alderman Dickerson,
Aye.
Alderman Long,
Aye.
Alderman Bowman,
No?
Alderman Bockelman,
Aye.
Alderman Turner,
Aye.
Alderman Milner,
No.
Alderman Reese,
No,
Alderman Levison.
No.
Okay, we have a 4-4. I'm going to vote yes to break the tie. So, Council Bill 32 will become ordinance 03439. Moving on to Council Bill 34.
Council Bill 34, a resolution of the Board of Aldermen of the City of Harrisonville, Missouri, to authorize the city administrator to execute an agreement with Wald Fireworks to provide the 2018 fireworks show in an amount not to exceed $12,000.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the board. As stated in the memo, the annual fireworks show that takes place each year on July 4th at City Park. We went out to bid and we only had one bidder, which is Wald Fireworks. Wald Fireworks has been our provider for the city for, as far as I look back as far as I could see, about 10 years. And I think it's probably longer than that because they've been in business for over 90. So they have done a very good job, and this is approved as a part of the Park Board's budget, and the Park Board has approved this, the staff does. And it is within our budget guidelines. And so I'll answer any questions that you may have.
And Chris, at the Park Board meeting, there was discussion about the cost of fireworks is going up. We were fortunate this year they didn't apply that, but I just want to be sure the board was aware that for next year there may be an increase. It's due to nothing else other than that the cost of the fireworks are going to go up, and the company will have to adjust accordingly. But always a good turnout. I think it's one of the best events we have all year. We always have a big crowd. I don't think I've ever seen an altercation out there, and everybody seems to get along for that few hours.
Yep. The increase they were talking about is somewhere around $2,000 for the next year.
But it hasn't gone up for quite some time, if I recall. It's
It's in 7 years, it's only gone up one time.
That's pretty
And
good.
it hasn't gone up in the last 3 years, I think.
Could you ask them to shoot them just a little bit higher?
A little bit higher.
Over that tree line between my house and the park?
I think I know
Just
the
a little bit
location
higher?
you're talking
Yeah,
about,
just a
so,
little higher.
sure.
All right. Any questions? All right.
Make a motion to approve.
Motion from Alderman Dickerson.
Second.
Second from Alderman Long. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And Council Bill 34 will become Resolution R19. Council Bill 35.
Council Bill 35, a resolution authorizing the city administrator to execute an agreement between the City of Harrisonville and Cass Regional Medical Center for patient transportation services by the Harrisonville Emergency Services Department.
So our 3-year contract that was signed in 2014 ran out in 2017. We've been extending that contract as we've worked on a new contract. Things that we were concerned with on the old contract was that it did not protect the city or the hospital, actually. Did not have enough legal language in there and had run-on sentences that I'm not sure why it was put together like it was. It was hard to understand. So we've gone through here and made some clarifications. We've had a number of discussions with Chris Lang and his crew out at the hospital, trying to clarify our responsibility, the responsibility of the hospital, how far we want to transport patients, how often we need to be available, what is the responsibility of the city's emergency medical service to the city itself and to those that surround us that are in the ambulance service district. So we've nailed it down to what you have in front of you this evening. After some tight discussions here in the last week or so, we've come up with what we think was a good contract for both sides. Protects us both. It's a 3-year contract. There is a clause to get out of it if we don't like it. But we do provide the service, and I think we've done a very good job for the hospital. And we will continue to do the same thing, but also be able to provide ambulance services for residents in Harrisonville.
I might add, it also significantly reduces the risk to the city financially. That was one of the things that we really worked hard to get clarified and changed.
So would that help with our uncollectibles? No, unfortunately.
Now, that's Medicare and Medicaid, that's just
That's
what
just
it is.
what it is,
Yeah,
okay.
It's gonna be underwritten, and the others, we just do the best we can.
Okay. All right, any other questions?
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion from Alderman Dickerson and a second from Alderman Levison. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And Council Bill 35 will become Resolution R20. Council Bill 36.
First reading, Council Bill 36, an ordinance to repeal ordinance number 3433 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Harrisonville that amended section 700.480 sewer service rates and reenact in lieu thereof the original sewer rates codified in section 700.480 B1 and B2 and establishing an effective date.
Self-explanatory.
Now, this is we're basically taking our sewer charge back to what it was originally before we started. And we will be starting that process over again at some point, but I think we heard from enough people that they didn't, not so much that they were upset with adjustments to rates, they didn't like the approach we took, and I think that this was a good move on our part to get the opportunity to pull this back and start over. So this is an ordinance. If you wish to approve tonight, you would need to suspend the ruling.
I'd make a motion to suspend the ruling on Council Bill 36 and move it to a second reading.
Okay.
Got it out.
Good job.
Marley.
I have a motion from Alderman Dickerson and a second from Alderman Milner to suspend the ruling and move Council Bill 36 to a second reading. Is there any further discussion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, a question.
Yes?
When we had the Public Works Committee meeting recently and this topic was discussed, I mentioned that I felt that we should expedite our plans to get the rate study done. My question tonight for you or for the city administrator is when will the rate study be done so that we know how much we are going to need to increase our sewer rate?
So we don't have a contract with anybody yet. We're putting that together for the RFQ. We'll have to do the interviews. That'll probably take us through June. You'll be into July before they start. It'll take them 3 months, probably on average, to finish it. So you're into September, October.
Before the rate study will be done?
Yeah,
Okay.
very possible. If we can get it done sooner, we will, but we still have to go through the process.
I just think that's an important piece.
I have a question.
Yes.
Well, as we've discussed this, I keep hearing people say, well, the water is subsidizing the sewer, correct? So logic would tell me, why wouldn't we, if we're going to raise our sewer rates, why don't we reduce our water rates a little bit and then raise the sewer rates? And if there's a big deal to do about maybe June, July, August, why not just average at all the other months, and then during those 3 months, then we give them an average amount? Or, something that we know for fact that, these are solid months, this is probably what you're using, and these months, you're probably outside doing some things. So I just, it just doesn't make any sense if we're saying water subsidizing this, then that leads me to believe we're asking them to pay too much for water in the first place. It needs to go to the sewer side, and just to make it
I mean, it,
appropriate. I mean,
it's currently been a combined fund, and there's been a push to have them, that it needs to stand on its own. One thing Mr. Passion pointed out is the way it is set up now, rates are, other than paying for the water treatment plant, we don't have any excess to do any other water projects, which could be water main replacements, upgrades, meter replacements. That's something to consider with the water rate. If we do get the sewer rate to stand on its own, it's to stand on its own, plus to pay for, we have sanitation requirements that will be coming in the next few years. Is if you free the money up from that, then we could go back to doing infrastructure upgrades that we haven't done for quite a while, because we would have some excess money, but we would have to look at all that. When we look at once we get the sewer set, we'd have to look at the water and say, okay, how much do we have, and what projects do we have that we would like to do? So, I've had that same question asked of me, and so, we'll have to tackle one mountain at a time, so. But the sewer, we do have, I believe we have 3 years. We have 3 years to be into the engineering phase.
We need to show some progress by
Correct.
the time we get back into our permitting
Right,
process.
yeah, that's what's been handed to them, so. Okay,
thank you.
all right, I had a motion and a second. Any other discussion? I'll need a roll call. This is to move it to second reading, if you forgot.
Alderman Milner,
Aye.
Alderman Bowman,
Aye.
Alderman Long,
Aye.
Alderman Dickerson,
Aye.
Alderman Levison,
Aye.
Alderman Reese,
Aye.
Alderman Turner,
Aye.
Alderman Bachman.
Okay, second reading, please.
Second reading, Council Bill 36, an ordinance to repeal ordinance number 3433 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Harrisonville that amended section 700.480 sewer service rates and reenact in lieu thereof the original sewer rates codified in section 700.480 B1 and B2 and establishing an effective date.
All right, I'll need a roll call again, please.
Alderman Dickerson,
Aye.
Alderman Levison,
Aye.
Alderman Reese,
Aye.
Alderman Long, Alderman Bowman,
Aye.
Alderman Milner,
Aye.
Alderman Bachman, Alderman Turner.
Aye.
All right, and Council Bill 36 will become ordinance 03440. Council Bill, before we get to the next one, I just wanted to point out, since this has rescinded what we did before, the old ordinance that we had, the Scrivener's error had gone to a first reading, that will now go away as a result of this, so.
It's irrelevant
Yeah.
to this, obviously, it's,
So it will,
just pull it from the agenda.
okay. All right, now we're ready for Council Bill 37.
Council Bill 37, ordinance ratifying ordinance number 3434 that amended section 205, article 5 fireworks of the Harrisonville Code of Ordinances, reaffirming the amended language and establishing an effective date. First reading.
Okay, this is what we discussed. There was an amendment made to add in having signage at the point of sale and at the point of checkout on the sale of a bottle rocket. When we passed this, there should have been we missed a step in the process of actually approving the amended version before having second reading. Mr. Fowler had said he felt it was okay as passed, but after discussing this further with Mr. Fairfield, we felt it was best to clean this up a little, so that's what this is. It is an ordinance again, so this is a first reading. There would have to be a motion to have a second reading in order to pass it tonight. Otherwise, there would be a second reading at our next meeting.
I make a motion that we suspend the rule and pass Council Bill 37 to its second reading.
Can we have a bit of a discussion before we go to that?
Once I get the second, I'll open it for discussion. You bet.
Thank you.
Second.
I have a motion from Alderman Dickerson and a second from Alderman Levison to move Council Bill 37 to a second reading. Would there like to be a discussion? Now's your time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think that there's a lot to this. You know, there's several changes or tweaks or whatnot. And I think that we really ought to at least do a quick, for example, we're changing it where we can sell bottle rockets. We're keeping it that we cannot shoot bottle rockets. We're changing, is this the one where we're doing the time
Like, yeah.
difference?
Right, this was, okay, to be clear, this was This was actually the one we passed that had made those changes. This is what is it's a ratification of what was essentially passed. So
Okay.
that basically that it was understood that it had been amended from its original version. So that's what this is to cover.
So,
But yes, what we had passed before was that there was you still can't shoot bottle rockets in city limits, but there's allowed the sale, and the time to shoot fireworks on the 3rd is now till midnight instead of 10 o'clock. The 1st and 2nd, you can still only shoot till 10 p.m. But we added those additional 2 hours on Thursday, or not Thursday, excuse me, the 3rd. So those were the amendment that was made to the original was Oliver Leeson has suggested having the signs, amending it to have signs at the fireworks stands that state that against city ordinance to discharge in city limits. So
Okay.
that's what, and this is this ordinance is to ratify to say what we passed is what we passed. I guess
okay, I
that's the
hate
right.
to admit my ignorance, but would you define ratify?
Me too.
very good. I'll
Right
let
the
you-
first
I'll
time
let you-
somebody-
Well,
Yeah.
essentially, unfortunately, I was not here, and when discussing with Mr. Fowler, he felt that it was adequate, and not, since I wasn't here, what the board did at that time, but because there had been some question about that, the purpose of this is basically to go back and say, okay, we passed this, there's some question whether we passed it correctly, so we're going to ratify what we did, which will allow it to be in, because you already passed something, there was at least a vote. So this ratification ordinance will basically say that we're going to look back and clean that up so that it's clear we have a proper motion to move to a second reading and we have a roll call that passes it. It's just, sometimes you will see companies that, for example, the president of the company may sign a contract and the board may go back and ratify his ability to sign that contract, or there may be something done, the board decides we will ratify, or basically say that had we been asked at the time, we would vote to approve.
Okay. There's mine. Pretty much.
There's a variety of meetings with the ratify, obviously, for
Okay.
example,
Well, what I'd like is just a simple sentence that says, this is what we're doing, and don't use the word ratify.
you are, whether it's validating or you are approving the ordinance that you voted on before, you're approving it again, let's put it this way.
Okay, so if we're approving it again,
Approving it, make sure you know what you approved.
So in case there was any confusion about the way it was done before, we're essentially voting for it again to clear that up.
But if it was an invalid ordinance the last time because it wasn't voted on appropriately, shouldn't this be a new ordinance?
Not necessarily. You can still ratify, the ordinance may not be invalid. It may have been valid. This, regardless of whether it's valid or invalid, you can still ratify and approve, which this does, the ordinance that you voted on at the meeting I did not attend.
okay, so what we're saying is we messed up that time, and this time we're not messing up,
Essentially.
but,
Yeah, we missed, when we took the vote, instead of having a vote on the amendment and then having a vote to suspend the ruling and have a second reading, we did it all as one motion, and we should have had two separate, we should have had one to amend and then one for the suspend the ruling to move the amended version, and that was my mishap, I put it into one and we went on and.
And it's arguably, what you did the last time, most courts would probably say, in my opinion, was probably adequate. But because there was a question about it, I suggested that we use the ratification, so now there's no question.
okay.
Yeah, it was pointed out after the meeting and after discussion, we decided it needed to be looked at and cleaned up,
Okay,
so.
so really the only thing, if I say aye, nay, or whatever we say,
Mhm.
whatever we choose to say, we're just simply saying, we're changing our method of approval.
We screwed up last time, we're fixing it this time.
You're fixing it.
Okay,
Potentially, you're clarifying your action, the action you took
okay.
of that meeting.
But we have to continue to take the same action.
It would be my recommendation that this would be the better way of doing it, even though arguably in some communities, they might pass it the way you passed it the last time.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, you know, when we talked about the Scrivener's error in the sewer ordinance, the sewer rate ordinance, I made a comment that I was grateful that that had happened because it allowed time for additional discussion with the public. This error also has done that. It has given us all a lot of additional time to listen to the public and how they really feel about the fireworks ordinance. And I will share with you that since we approved the last ordinance, a lot of individuals have come to me with objections to the ordinance. And the things that they're objecting to are twofold. One is the fact that we are allowing the sale of bottle rockets, but not allowing them to be sold in town. But more importantly, there's more objections to the extension of the shooting time. Individuals have said that those who are shooting fireworks are not honoring the 10 p.m. time now. And there's fear that if that time is extended to midnight, that they and their families and their dogs will be bothered by fireworks noises even into the early morning hours. So I just want to say that, and I'm not going to support it.
I would counter with, I've had 0 calls, and I think the extension of the hours will actually reduce the number of people that are abusing the 10 o'clock because they have an opportunity on another night, especially if it rains. You never know with the weather. If it rains on the 4th, which it has a lot of people watch the park display, you have to work the next day. It gives them a day to actually shoot their fireworks, and then you have the 4th. So, and I would say I feel a little more, I feel a little better about the stricter enforcement of the 10 o'clock on the other 2 days, because you will have 2 opportunities to shoot at a later time, because again, you basically have 45 minutes to try to do a fireworks show or shoot with your kids, and you know, it gives 2 opportunities. So you have 2 days that are unchanged, 2 days that allow the later shoot.
I respect your opinion. I hope you'll respect mine.
Oh, I do. I just was given the counter. So any other comments?
I still think we're putting a little bit more strain on our police to try and enforce the fact that we're allowing people to buy them, but you're not allowed to shoot them. And I think it's just gonna be, it's ridiculous.
Okay.
And that's my opinion.
All right. So this is this was an ordinance. We had a first and a second, did we not?
Right.
Okay, because that's right, she'd asked for discussion. All right, so we need a roll call on moving this to a second reading. Okay, all right, we're back in.
Alderman Dickerson,
Aye.
Alderman Levison,
Aye.
Alderman Reese,
Nay.
Alderman Long,
Aye.
Alderman Bowman,
No.
Alderman Miller,
No.
Alderman Turner,
Aye.
and Alderman Bachman.
Aye.
Okay, and we will have second reading at our first meeting in June. That concludes our agenda tonight. You did, but it wasn't unanimous, remember, we don't.
Oh,
Yep, so we usually, that's the, all right, so we are done with our agenda items. Alderman committee reports, Alderman Bowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm sorry that he stepped away because I really wanted to acknowledge Chris Deal this evening. I had the opportunity to work with my fellow Rotarians at the trap shoot at the Polecat facility earlier in the week. And it was very well attended. We raised about $2,000 for the Just For Me Kids program, the summer program for kids. So I just wanted to commend Chris Deal for the leadership that he brought to this, and my fellow Rotarian volunteers who selfishly gave up their time to work that event. It was a great event, and it's our first annual event, so there will be more to follow. So if you would please include in the minutes that I'd like to commend Parks Director Chris Deal for his work with the trap shoot. Thank you, Randy. That's all, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Alderman Bachman. Alderman Reese.
Naturally, you know.
Oh, that's all right.
I just want to mention that we had the town hall meeting that Alderman Bowman and I have every other month, more or less. And this last one, we had like the DEA there. It's all about drugs in Harrisonville. Terribly informing. I mean, I've heard those programs before, and this one was just every time there are more things that make you go, oh, and other things that make you go, oh, we're so proud. And one of the neatest things is, of course, we had Uso there. Am I saying that correctly? Uso. And that is the new dog. And he just makes you so proud, so incredibly proud. For this huge room, you have this little piece of marijuana, and the dog goes, grabs this stuff. And he's been, I think, a big help to the department. He certainly been a big help to Harrisonville. He's done very positive things. And so at any rate, I just wanted to thank you for your part in that. Really appreciate it. It's a great program.
All right. Alderman Miller.
Just remind everybody that tomorrow is Strawberry Day. Kiwanis will have their strawberries.
Still on your thunder. I'm just kidding.
So I looked, it wasn't on your list. That's why. Just remind everybody to go out and support them because they come back and support our community.
Yes, they do. Glad you get strawberries.
Yes.
All right. Alderman Dickerson.
No.
Alderman Long. I'm good. Alderman Turner. Alderman Lees.
Nothing tonight.
Mr. Welch, a couple of things on your updated report. I'll be handing out the budget questionnaire at the next meeting. And then we will have a work session before the June 21st meeting, so we can go through what's on the questionnaire and get some direction for budget this year.
I'll be gone.
June 23rd, Thursday.
It's the 21st.
Isn't that what I said? No, I got on there 21st.
Yeah, June 21st is a Thursday.
Way to go, Skippy.
Once again.
Yep, the 18th.
18th. Too many numbers. All right.
We have to vote to amend that.
Yeah, we were looking at some other meeting at that point.
Sure, Turner.
Yeah, there you go. So, June 18th. It'll just be before the next meeting. We'll have 2 early work sessions in June. Just when everybody wants to come early to a meeting.
That's right.
Also, we got a public safety committee meeting scheduled for Thursday, June 14th. I did double check that. Thank you. That'll be at 6 o'clock. We'll be talking about the PIPS program and the adding of a patrol officer corporal rank. So a couple of important issues on the 14th.
Okay.
That's it. Unless somebody got questions about my report, besides the dates.
All right.
Sure you don't want to say anything about Strawberry Day tomorrow?
You did a great job. You're a better salesman than I.
All right. Just want to remind everybody again that is interested, June 5th at 6 p.m. is our Public Works meeting. We'll talk about the boat ramp there. I know there's been a lot of people that have expressed interest in that, so should be an interesting discussion. Thursday night, Harrisville is hosting the Missouri Municipal League Westgate Dinner over at Beck Event Center. So we will have elected officials from other communities around this area, the west side of the state, that will be down here to see our community and our historic district and kind of showcase some of that, so we're excited about that. You may have seen on the news and possibly in the paper, the thrift store, the Ministerial Alliance thrift store is getting ready to, they had their groundbreaking ceremony. They're going to add onto their existing building a new processing center, and they'll be opening up more room in their main building for additional items, like they want to try to get more furniture and expand their clothing. With the loss of the Goodwill store, that store has, I think, picked up, and I think that will really be a good thing for them to have a larger selection. I also received a call from someone who works the food pantry quite often. I don't know the details. All I know is that for some reason this year, they do not have their annual food drive with Walmart. I don't know what all that entails, but I know that the pantry is going to struggle. They are exploring some ideas for fundraisers to try to help offset some of that. Anybody who comes up with any good ideas or thoughts on how you could help that food pantry, it helps a lot of families in this community that struggle. I've been over to work it before, and I can guarantee you, everybody in this room would see somebody there that you know at one time or another that comes in that pantry that needs some type of assistance. So they'll probably be reaching out to the community, and I have faith the community's gonna respond, but wanted to get that out there now so people are aware of it and kind of looking out for it. And that's all I have. Hopefully the nice weather continues. It's cooled off a little bit, but grass is up and running again with the rain, so that's all I have.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion from Alderman Dickerson and a second from Alderman Long to adjourn. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Good night, everyone.